All right, babies. Use cases. Something happened. All right. Uh, Use cases and scenarios. Um, all right. What's the purpose of use cases and scenarios? Well, use cases and scenario describes how a person and system interacts with a solution being modeled to achieve a goal. So a use case is something that has happened before, right? That's basically it. A use cases describe the interactions between the primary actor, the solution, and any secondary actors needed to achieve the primary actor's goal. The use cases are usually triggered by the primary actor, but in some methods may also be triggered by another system or by an external event or timer. A use case describes the possible outcomes of an attempt to accomplish a particular goal or the solution will support. Okay, so before we go into the mumbo jumbo of all this fucking crap, uh, a use case is a description of what we're going to use whatever it is we're working on for. That's basically it. It's simplest form. It could be a business that attempted something at one point. It could be a structure that attempted something else at another point. It could be just many things. It could be a story that you heard from somewhere that kind of like resulted in something that led to you discovering a way to do something. A use case, basically, right? A use case describes the possible outcomes of an attempt to accomplish a particular goal, and the solution will support. Right? So, like, this is a possible outcome, and this is how we potentially could use it. So it's either something that you've used before or something you're gonna be using, right? Or you can create, because if I'm gonna do this, how do you think that will happen? You're kind of like designing the journey. And the primary or basic flow represents the most direct way to accomplish the goal and of the use case. Specifically, circumstances and exceptions of the result or failure to complete a goal of the use case are documented. So for me to move this bottle from here to here, I have to lift my hand, grab it, and raise it. So the solution, which is using my hand or my head in this case, because I can just push it, right? I can like flip it. Right? And then so like let's use a use case when it comes to a business. A new solution checks every car upon entry, but now every car that's delivering something cannot afford to wait 30 minutes or 15 minutes to be checked. So how would we apply the use case? Here we go. Now you start considering, all right, okay, so how does the car get in? How does it do it? And so these are what he's talking about. It's like in the result and failure and complete the goal. So there's, okay, a car comes and it's checked, fuck yeah, we test the solution. That's the use case. But then you go like, there's this, there's that, there's this, there's that. And then you start building around it. And then suddenly the flow changes. And then the case itself kind of like expands to fill basically the different details that we might miss or something. And ultimately, we use that in order to test whether our product makes sense or not, because now suddenly we have all the different stakeholders, or at the very least, we have all the constraints, the physical constraints. So the solution made sense mentally or theoretically, but with us taking a step forward and creating a use case around it, we're able to see kind of like poke holes in it and adjust the solution so it works differently. Use case diagrams are graphical representation of relationships between actors and one or more use cases supported by the solution. Some use case approaches distinguish between business use case and system use case. Of course, business use case describing how actors interact in a particular process or business function. A system use case describing the interaction between an actor and a software application. I love details. I think it's all in the details. I think it's taking a step back and actually looking at these details where everything kind of like falls into place. But I don't know. I think it's a case by case thing. But interacting with software is definitely similar to interacting with the world, but like there are limitations simply because software, even though software applies the same logic as the world, it doesn't have that it doesn't have that human factor, I guess, because it's code. So I would always want to separate it because just because people are able to implement a solution doesn't mean they're able to interact with the software that builds it. right? But anyways, uh, the scenario describes just one way an actor can accomplish. A scenario describes one way, because here basically we're doing use cases and scenarios. We've been talking about use cases all along, and a scenario describes just one way that an actor can accomplish a particular goal. Scenarios are written as a series of steps performed by actors for the solution that enable an actor to achieve a goal. A use case describes several scenarios. That basically explains it beautifully. What are the elements? A use case diagram. There is no fixed universal format for use cases. Yes. Following elements are frequently captured in a use case description. A use case diagram visually depicts the scope of solution by showing the actors who interact with the solution, which the cases they interact with, and how many relationships between the cases. Unified modeling language describes the standard notation for use case diagram and stuff like this. So the use case diagram is literally the BPMN, business process modeling notation. Remember them, the squares and the circles, and this leads to this, and this leads to this. That's practically all the work we have to fucking do, man. So a use case diagram visually depicts the scope of the solution by showing actors who interact with the solution. What are the relationships between actors? Use cases are called associations. An association line directs that an actor has access to the functionality represented by the use case. Here, basically, it's just kind of like, this line between actor and the use case is basically showing that this actor is necessary. There are two commonly used relationships between use cases. You extend and you include allows for an insertion of additional behavior into a use case. The use case that's being extended must be completely functional its own. Yeah, I feel here this is kind of like super basic, and because everything kind of like explains, like here, does this extend and this include? It's just because we wrote extend and include. So extend allows for an insertion of additional behavior into a use case. Include allows for the use case to make use of functionality present in another use case. So here use case 2 is extending use case 4, while use case 3 is extending use case 2. Which means use case 3 to finish, it has to extend use case 2, while use case 2, in order for it to finish, it has to build on top of use case 4, right? Or around it. I don't know. The included use case does not need to be complete. In the extend, the use case must be completed. In the include, it doesn't have to be completed. Like include as in I use pieces of it until I'm able to finish my own thing, because maybe I need some things in the other use case, right? So in the include, do not need to be a complete use case in its own right? While here, must be extended completely functional in its own right. So if use case 3 extends use case 2, it means use case 3 has to be done in order for use case 2 to start, right? Something like that. Use case description, what's the name? We describe it with the name. Every use case has a unique name. The name generally includes a verb that describes the action taken by the actor. It's one of those like, شو اسمه, supply, logistic, delivery, support, system, X, I don't know, right? Like you kind of like give every single thing in the title. The name generally includes a verb that describes the action taken by the actor, and noun describes what the being done or the target of action. And the goal basically is a brief description of successful outcome or the use case from the perspective of a primary actor. This acts as a summary for the use case. Actors is a person or a system external to the solution that interacts with the solution. Each actor is given a unique name and represents the role that play in interactions with each solution. Some of the use case authoring approach recommend against the use of systems or events as actors. Some use case authoring approaches recommend against the use of systems or events as actors. As in, yeah, it's like when they're talking actors, they're specifically saying a person. I don't know, I think I might understand that. Because like, if you're building a use case for a system, then you're probably not necessarily documenting the system right or clearly. right? A use case is started by an actor referred to as a primary actor. Use case, other actors who participate in the use case or in a supporting role are called secondary actors. A precondition is in fact, a fact that must be true before the use case can begin. The precondition is not tested in the use case but acts as a constraint in its execution. A trigger is an event that initiates the flow of events or use case, the most common trigger of action taken by a primary actor. What I'm thinking is like, somebody calls and puts an order and that triggers a series of events, and that's basically the case study, right? From A to Z, what happens. A temporal event, for example, time can initiate a use case. This is commonly used to trigger a use case. Like every day at 3 o'clock, for example, or 1 o'clock, we go for lunch, right? Such as end of day routine and end of month reconciliation of a system. What are the flow of events? The flow of events is the set of steps performed by the actor and the solution during the execution of the use case. Most use case description separate out of basic, primary, and main success flow that represents the shortest or simplest successful path that accomplishes the goal of the actor. Most use case descriptions separate out basic, primary, or main success flow. Basic, it's because it's primary, it's the one we're already using, and main success flow is the one we're kind of like expecting, I guess. So what they're trying to tell us here, the flow of events, if you're gonna build a use case, you can't do one that's already like that lacks detail. You can't do one that's already like established, and you can't do one that's kind of like the go-to path. You have to like test awkwardly. Here, because they're saying that these things kind of like represent the shortest or simplest successful path, so that's kind of like stupid, because you need something a bit more complex in order for you to dig in. Use cases might also include alternatives and exception flows. Alternative flows describe other paths may be followed or allowed, or allow the actor to successfully achieve the goal or the use case. Exception flows describe the desired response by the solution. When the goal is unachievable, then the use case cannot successfully be completed. What are the post-conditions or guarantees? Post-condition is any fact that must be true when the use case is complete. The post-conditions must be true for all possible flows through the use case, including both the primary and alternative flows. The use case may describe separate post-conditions that are true for successful and unsuccessful executions, or for the use case. A post-condition is any fact that must be true when the use case is complete. And what are the guarantees? I don't know. Are they talking about guarantees? Success guarantee describes the post-conditions for success. Minimal guarantees describe the conditions for the required true. So the post-condition is like, this use case is completed if this happens, right? That's basically it. It's the end result, or at the end state, right, being scoped. What are the usage considerations? Strengths. Use diagram can clarify scope and provide high-level understanding of requirements. Use case descriptions are easily understood by stakeholders due to their narrative flow. Inclusion of a desired goal or outcome ensures the business value in the use case is articulated. Right, like it kind of like gives you a visual of the thing that could actually happen. Use case descriptions articulate the functional behavior of a system. Limitations. The flexibility of a use case description format may lead to information being embedded that would be better captured using other techniques, such as user interface interaction. As creative as the use case could be, our goal is probably to kind of like limit that creativity, or at the very least engage with it in a very like understanding way. Decisions that the business rules that define them should not be recorded directly in use cases, but managed separately and linked from the appropriate step. The decisions and the business rules that define them should not be recorded directly in the use case, but managed separately and linked from the appropriate step. The flexible format of use cases may result in capturing inappropriate or unnecessary detail in the attempt to show every step or action. Use cases intentionally do not relate to the design of the solution, and as a result, significant effort may be required in development to map use cases steps to forward architecture. right? So like here, look, we intentionally do not relate the design of the solution as the result and as a design of the solution because we want because significant effort may be required in development to map the use case steps. So the last thing we would want to do is like include design, and then with the use case, people just kind of like try to copy the use case instead of actually like dive into the design and the solution. Oh, user stories. Woohoo. We're almost done, guys.